Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the 132nd session of Majlis Al Khonji. Please allow me to introduce our guest for this session, Dr. Fahim Tariq, co-founder and director of SciFlair, a UK-based technology company working with more than 15 innovation products in its portfolio. He has over 20 years of industrial experience in the security and automation industry in the United Kingdom, where he managed many projects in the IT and innovation field. In 2000, he got his PhD from Center for Communication Research from the University of Bristol, UK. Today, he will be talking about the role of new and emerging technologies for agriculture and food security in Oman, focusing on the importance of the technology for the food security, the challenges and the suggestions and recommendations. Welcome Dr. Tariq to Majlis Al Khonji, and I would like also to welcome Dr. Mohammed Al-Razaqi, Deputy Director of Innovation and Agricultural and Marine Science and a researcher at the College of Agricultural and Marine Science at Sultan Qaboos University. Dr. Mohammed, welcome to Majlis Al Khonji and over to you. Thank you very much.
الرحيم شكرا لجميع الحضور today in our 132nd session. I would like to welcome Dr. Mohammed Tariq to give us a speech on the role of new and emerging technologies in food securities. Dr. Mohammed Fahim Tariq, he is the founder and director of security and automation company engaged in Internet of Things. He's also a program manager for a multi-million-dollar international multidisciplinary engineering projects. He has more than 20 years of industrial experience in the security and automation industries in the United Kingdom. He got his PhD from Center of Communications of Research from the University of Bristol in 2000. So please, Dr. Mohammed, share your slides and will be honored to listen to your lecture. For 30 to 40 minutes, then we'll have Q&A sessions for our attendees to discuss the work. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting me speak about the role of new and emerging technologies for agriculture and food security. I wanted to give you a little bit background about myself. As Dr. Razaqi, he already mentioned about my background in detail, but I just wanted to say that I have worked on various technology projects in Oman since 2005. And at the moment, I'm working to produce a number of plug-and-play sensors for the agritech market. Besides, I'm supervising 2 PhDs in the UK to automate and optimize operations in insect farming and aquaponics. Before I go ahead, I wanted to share with you the agenda of today's talk. There are 4 points I'm going to cover. The very first one is that why there is a need for the use of technology to increase food security. The second point is, what are the new and emerging technologies? What are the challenges in adopting these new technologies in Oman? And are there any suggestions and recommendations? So let's talk about the very first point, why there is a need for the use of technology to increase food security. It's a very huge topic. You can write books about it, but I have pointed just only few things that can help us direct towards the right direction. So the very first reason that I wanted to mention is about population increase. The global population is going to reach 9.7 billion by 2050. According to UN Food and Agricultural Organization, they say that 70% increase is needed in food production. And 20% of that increase should come from creating new arable land, but 80% of that should come by increasing the yield and reduce the losses in food chain. Clearly, the way to optimize yield and cut losses is by applying new technologies. The second point is climate changes. Until now, most of our systems to produce food are manual, and they are relying on traditional wisdom. You have seen how food is produced in the agricultural lands and how that is distributed. It needs a lot of thinking to come to the technology part of it. Basically, it needs an update, technological update. The rapid climate changes are taking place everywhere, and we have extreme temperatures. You might have witnessed the Gulf Stream, which is stopped, which is coming to Oman, and that is stopped. And the rising sea levels, the North and South Pole, glaciers, they are melting, and the sea levels are rising. The droughts are a common, sight at the moment. And lately, the pandemic and many other things, they are pointing towards very difficult times ahead. And the most important thing is that growing food is becoming unpredictable. There is a strong case to apply technologies which can produce food locally and save natural resources. The other point to cover is about upstream food production costs. I just give an example of two main ingredients that are used to produce food. One of them is fish meal, and the second one is soybean. If you see the last 30 years of their prices, you can see the soybean started at about $232 per ton. It even went to $175, dollars per ton in 2000, around 2000, basically. At the moment, its price is about $700 per ton. Similarly, the fish meal, which was about $300 in around 2000, is now sold at about $1,600 per ton. So there is a huge increase in food production ingredients that are used at the moment. And this is going to go high as the time is going to pass. There's a lot of starvation. 1 in 9 people are sleeping empty stomach. 1 in 3 are suffering from malnutrition. And on top of that, the political instability. You can see the wars which are going on since about 20 years or more. They are creating a lot of uncertainty. The definition of food security is that the food should be available, it should be accessible, it should be utilizable, and there is a stable supply of food. All these 4 tenets, they are being challenged at the moment. Now, another important thing is that because of the rise of internet and digital communication, consumers are becoming more and more aware about food. They are demanding traceability. They are also saying the traceability, they want transparency in food production. So that's another reason that the technology has to be updated and the technology has to play a major part in producing food. Now let's come to the second point of the talk, which is what are the new and emerging technologies? Again, there are so many advancements in technology since last 10 years, since the widespread use of internet and digital communication, mobile phones and portable devices. There is a huge upsurge of emerging technologies. A lot of innovation is taking place. Even it's difficult to cover all these innovations in a very short time. I will point out to some of these innovations and technologies that I came across, or at least I worked on. The very first one is about precision agriculture. In the past, using of probes to measure soil temperature, humidity, pH, electrical conductivity, NPK, sap flow, all these things were used not by farmers, but by people who used to direct farmers, basically. But at the moment, what's happening is that there is a new generation of online probes that are available in the market that lets you monitor your own field, monitor your own agricultural crop, and make decisions independent of the central bodies and the advice and the common advice that is available. The drones are capturing images, and they are used to spray pesticides. One of the companies in Oman, I have put down a slide, small, is Fahim Tariq, that is taking the initiative in Oman to spray pesticides, and they are also doing the image analysis on counting the number of date palm trees. The satellite image data is being used, and SQU is have written a number of papers on using satellite data to understand how the crop and what are the agricultural yields that are being produced. Nowadays, the robots are a common sight in some of the farms, which are used to inspect crop, and they are used to harvest crop. For example, I've seen some demos for harvesting lettuce, and there are other uses of robots, for example, to take out the weeds and other things in the agricultural fields. Before I go ahead, all of this is happening because of three things. One of them is Internet of Things. The second thing is robotics, and the third thing is AI, basically, which is based on machine learning and machine vision. I wanted to introduce you a little bit about the concept of these three things, how they work together, and what they are producing. So let me go to the second. So that's the sort of block diagram that is merging all these three disciplines and making and making something which is beneficial for optimizing the yield and increase production. So there are sensors, as I introduced to you in the past, which are any type of sensors like soil sensors, temperature sensors, humidity sensors. There are about 300 different types of sensors which are available in the market. And then there are motors, actuators, and robotic platforms. These are connected to some sort of communication devices. These communication devices are GSM devices. We have Wi-Fi devices, Ethernet devices, which are much more mature technologies. But there are new devices that are coming to the market, or they are getting mature, or mesh, for example, is one of them. LoRa is another technology which is let me admit someone in, and the Sigfox, NB-IoT, and many others. All these technologies are getting the data through internet, and this data is then stored on cloud, in cloud servers, and from where there are some end user applications that are fetching this data. They are letting end users to do the visualization and do AI analysis. And after doing AI analysis, they are making some business decisions, basically, to control. For example, if the AI analysis says that the humidity is getting too high in the place of production or in a farm, then a command is sent through the back route back to the the actuators or sensors or robotic platform to control these parameters. And this whole process of feedback continues. So this is basically the block diagram of IoT, robotics, and AI, how they are playing a key role in today's agritech. The second most important thing that is catching the eye is one of the pioneers of agritech is livestock monitoring. In the past, livestock monitoring was happening manually. People were raising their herds, and they were using all this based on traditional wisdom. They used to they used to have set times for feeding their animals. They used to base all their decisions based on what their forefathers or their established know-how was, or what was the central bodies they were telling them, okay, you have to use this sort of feed and all those things. But this is changing very, very fast now. Now, for example, there are technologies available that are able to track cow locations. You can find out, not only the cows, but sheep, goats, all other livestock animals. They are being tracked, and you can find out where they are grazing. People can easily monitor by using automatic collars. that what sort of feed they are getting, how many times they are putting their neck down to feed, basically. So there are sensors which are letting them know that how much this particular animal has fed, with so much of food today. So they are doing also, the same collars are doing behavior analysis, that for example, if your cow is lying down or if it's standing, how many hours it's standing, all these things are being detected and tracked. And then I've seen demos of geofencing. For example, in the fields in UK, in the past, they used to put up barriers like electrical fencing and all other things. They are now replaced by electrical collars, basically. So if an animal goes near to neighboring boundaries, they are given some sort of slight shocks and all those things some sort of alarms are sounded that directs them back to their own fields. So there are things happening like disease detection and all those things, okay, are happening. For example, in one of the demos that I have attended and I've seen in Center for Machine Vision in Bristol Robotics Lab, they have done a great work on detection of lameness. 50% of the cows, are affected by this sort of disease, and that's why their produce is reduced quite a lot. So they have used high resolution cameras to detect lameness, and now there are technologies which are being used to understand when is the calving process and artificial insemination and all those things are being tracked. So these all technologies are all pointing towards increasing the yield, increasing animal welfare, and all those things. And automatic alerts are being generated using similar sort of mechanism, and they are letting the stakeholders know that what is the next course of action that has to be done for certain for certain activity. Similarly, there's a lot of advancement that is going on about poultry monitoring. Chickens are now produced in some of the farms in UK using AI and artificial intelligence. People are able to understand how many hens are there in certain area, are there ghettos of hen, why they are getting together, how many of them are feeding, how many of them are stagnant actually. That points out in the past that if the hen is not moving too much, that means there is it's near to catch disease, or maybe they are dead. So all these are now being detected by use of high resolution cameras and all those things. So there is two aspects of all this thing is. One of them is environmental monitoring, where the temperature, the humidity, all the gases and all those things are being tracked, and at the same time they are fed back to the poultry farm to make changes in almost real time to the environment where chickens are basically produced. Similar thing is true for quails, for example, for ostrich breeding and all those things. For example, all these things, I mean, if you look into the breeding of ostrich and all those things, they are very prone to disease at a very early age. So if the temperature and all those conditions are controlled very closely, then they can their chance of survival becomes more and more. So all these things are now being tracked using the advanced technologies, which has to be to be the future for agritech and all those things. Then another advancement is about aquaponics, which is the production of fish and plants. They work together in a closed loop system while reusing 90% of the water. That is the technology that is very much relevant to Oman. And there is one of the farms that is already in operation in Baraka. I think that's called Al Arfan farm that has started, and it's producing food based on similar sort of principle. So all these, the fish, basically, the basic concept is that the fish is reared in tanks, And the fish, once they are they are in the tank, they produce their excretes, they produce ammonia, and when it's fed with the fish feed, the unused fish feed is also producing ammonia. This ammonia is poisonous for the fish, and if it's prolonged for a long time in the fish tank, ammonia poisoning is going to happen, and it's going to basically poison the fish. So what they do is they circulate the water, they take the water out using pumps and or a gravity-fed sort of system, and this water is then channeled to grow beds, which are basically soilless mediums to produce food. For example, they are using some sort of river stones and pebbles to grow food, and not only this, they are also using some sort of media beds, okay, deep water culture and all those things are used. So they are producing plants or vegetables and some sort of edible plants using no soil. So what happens is that from here the ammonia rich water enters the plants, or there are some filters. In these filters, the nitrifying bacteria which are present in the atmosphere are going to convert the ammonia into nitrates, which is used as a plant food, and also filters the water, which is then fed back to the fish tank. So there is all sort of sensors which are available, like ammonia sensor, temperature, dissolved oxygen sensors, electrical conductivity sensors, which are available, and they are used online to measure all those things. This was not possible in the past because if you are basing your decision late, then there is a very small window in which your whole fish stock can die, basically. We have tested, this is the right-hand picture is me. We have deployed some sort of dissolved oxygen sensors in some of the farms in UK. They are giving alarms when the dissolved oxygen goes less than the required level. For example, in the farm in UK that we are using, the desired oxygen for producing trout is about 9.36 milligrams per liter. But when it drops to less than that, for example, because trout and salmon and all those fish are they need a lot of oxygen, basically. So it sounds the alarm, and this alarm is then alerting the farm manager or the stakeholders that, look, you need to either look at the devices, why there is a failure and all those things. And then there is also environmental monitoring. That's another aspect of similar sort of thing. For example, you are understanding how much temperature, relative humidity, carbon dioxide is there, and all those things. And these all technologies, they work all together to optimize and produce the food at a great scale. So this is about aquaponics, and similar is true for aquaculture, basically, which is one of the technologies that is quite been invested in Oman. And there is Bioflow, which is also one of the technologies that are being used at the moment, and that are being tried. This has been tried in Africa and in South Asian countries to produce fish, basically. There is a lot of advancement going on vertical farming. The main ambition is that you produce a artificial environment using LED lights, basically. So a lot of troughs of leafy greens, microgreens, and all those things are and mushrooms and saffron. Sorry, not the mushroom, the saffron and all those things. They are produced in the trays. These trays are having artificial light, and this light is taking the role of sunlight, although it's not very efficient. I mean, the sunlight is 13 hours of sunlight is 13 hours of LED lighting is equivalent to about 6 hours of sunlight. But it's excellent medium for producing a large scale food. I mean, a lot of this is being produced in Netherlands and other places. And in UK, in some of the biggest farms, they are using such a technology to produce a lot of food. And then there are multispectral scanners. They are used to understand the color color of the plants, the height of the plants, and many other things that give them some sort of notion that what is missing in getting an optimum yield from all those things. Okay, so these are the sort of systems that are being tried. Again, all in all, this is all happening because of three things. One of them is Internet of Things and the robotics and the AI and machine vision and all those things. They are getting together and producing such a system that can be used to produce food at large scale. Nowadays, I mean, people are using even similar sort of controlled environment to produce mushrooms. I mean, some of the mushroom farms I've seen, they are producing very expensive breeds of mushrooms, and this is used as a livelihood for a lot of people. So all this is possible because of the use of technologies and these mechanisms. So some of the other things that I have experienced and I'm directing one of the supervising one of the PhD about is about insect farming. Because what's happening is, as I mentioned in the very early on in the talk, that two important ingredients of food production is soybean and fish meal. These are the main ingredients that are being used because of their protein contents. And as we are moving forward, the climatic changes and all those things are making it difficult to sustain all these resources for the future of feed production. So now there's a lot of research which is going on in the world, especially in Europe and US, that they are working towards producing protein using insects. And one of the more attractive things about, most important things about insects is that they are using far less, resources. They don't need, a lot of resources like soybean and, fish meal and all those things. At a very 1/8 or maybe more than that, you can cut down the, the type of resources needed to produce these insects. So three main insects that are being tried at the moment are mealworms, crickets, and black soldier flies. I mean, there is I've mentioned, I've shown a picture of the life cycle of a mealworm. Basically, what happens is that you have eggs. From the eggs, about 10 to 12 days later, these eggs then produce larvae, and then about 50 days later, these larvae are quite big enough, and they have about 50% or more, or 50 to 60% protein contents in them. They are used and they are harvested at that point. Okay, and some of them, about 25% of these larvae, they are not harvested. They are used to produce the next colony of insects, basically. So they are let to live, and then afterwards, about 80 days later, these eggs they become adult darkling beetles, which are these black color beetles, and I have shown these beetles over here in some of these trays. Okay, so one of the biggest problem for us was that we did not had a lot of data about these insects, how the process happen and all those things. So we have designed a very high resolution insecto device that takes a picture of these insect rearing trays every hour and upload it to the cloud. And these pictures are then analyzed in real time by AI algorithms. And they understand, for example, how many, at one point in time, how many larvae are there, what is their growth, because if the timing is very important in all those things, because if you let the larvae live for a long time, for example, if you proceed by 50 days, then what's happening is that it turns into pupae and it turns into adult beetle, and that at that point this is not very useful for protein, for example, for protein harvesting. And also the level of the humidity and the level of the temperature has to be controlled, because if they are not controlled, then this process can slow down, or that can speed up based on how the level of temperature, what is the level of temperature is, what is the humidity is. And that, for example, if the CO2 level is not adequate, for example, there are millions and millions of these insects into these trays, and sometimes they are the CO2 level increases in between these trays, and the air is stalled and it becomes stagnant, basically. And when it becomes stagnant, what happens later on is that these insects die, and then you lose all your produce. So these technologies help us to basically understand and gauge at what point the intervention is needed to do and produce the desired results. One of the biggest problems, by the way, in insect farming at the moment is to produce the insects at a large scale. For example, if I give you an example of a small feed farm in UK, which is producing feed using soybean and all those things, their consumption is about 30 tons a week. And producing such amount of feed and consistently in a repeatable manner is a big challenge. I mean, that needs a technology intervention. And without advanced technology, it is very difficult to live up to these sort of challenges. I mean, these people are very willing to use these as an alternative source, but then there must be enough effort or technology which is present to produce those quantities. And if we are not producing those quantities, then what's going to happen is that the demand is going to increase, and that demand is going to translate into the cost and all those things. And the cycle is how it's going to go ahead and increase the price of food and all those things. Okay, so this is a sort of overview of in insect farming. I just wanted to give you a small demo of the insecto working, which is a small video that tells you, for example, this is a platform. That sort of platform is produced. In this platform, we are using various sensors, because sensors has to be produced in various locations, as I told you, in around the trays, because at any point in time, you don't know, there are gaps or there are pockets of CO2 that can kill these insects. So, for example, here the optimum temperature is always maintained using a feedback control, so 25 degrees, and the humidity that is needed is about 70 degrees. And this has been monitored. And these things are available online. And once these are available online, you can see them and you can control all the parameters in the farm. For example, here we are able to see the history of 1 week of data, or even years of data. And that is the key to do AI analysis. I mean, there are many doctors here who will tell you that we need a lot of data, historic data, to understand how we are going to do prediction, or even how we are going to make twins, and if we are going to make twins, basically, for those things. Okay, so this is the main working of the insecto device. We are taking high resolution pictures. These are the the high resolution pictures which are taken over here. We are measuring temperature, pressure, CO2 levels, humidity, airflow, even the volatile organic compounds, VOC, and all those things are being measured, and a data point is produced every 3 to 5 minutes, and this is then fed back to the AI engines, where they can analyze and see this. For example, this one is a a close-up of a insect monitoring tray, one of the trays. So we take thousands of these images, and even the feeding mechanism. For example, these in this particular scenario, the carrots are fed to mealworms, basically, to produce mealworms. And as you can see, as the slides are progressing down, so these are, for example, this image is, especially this image is about the that special image was about the eggs, basically, that are lying on the tray. So from here, the whole produce is then done and carried out, for example. And later on, these are the some of the pictures of the mealworms, and you see how they are growing. For example, if they are growing too fast, and they change into the next stage, then that is not desired for us. I mean, we need to have certain sort of schedule where we are harvesting, where we are doing the next stage, and all those things. And if they are too slow, for example, that cannot happen. By the way, the desired temperature for these insect farming is somewhere at 25 to 30 degrees. And in UK and in a lot of European countries, it is not possible. So a lot of energy is needed to get to that temperature. But in Oman, that is ideal for to getting into this sort of technology. And producing protein, which is because we don't have to do a lot of temperature alteration and all those things in here. I mean, only few months they are difficult, but then at the end of the day, it's the cost of production will be much less than cost of similar produce in UK. Only thing that is missing is to have a mastery of these sort of technologies which are not very difficult actually to do, and then we can get to the next level of this whole discussion. Okay, so I come to sort of the conclusion of these sort of technologies that I mentioned, which are all based on the three things: IoT, artificial intelligence, robotics. I wanted to point out before we start the Q&A sessions and discussions, that what are the challenges in adopting new technologies in Oman. Of course, that needs an effort from everyone. I have pointed few of these challenges that are there, and they have to be addressed. And there are various ways of addressing those challenges here. One of them is specialist knowledge. Now, when I say specialist knowledge, I do not mean people who are professors in the universities, in SQU, in technology college in Oman and many other places, Sohar universities, and all those people, they know very well what is a technology and what is going to happen. I'm talking about the specialist knowledge that is needed by the end user. For example, if I'm operating a farm, I need to know what if my temperature goes up, what is going to happen, and what are the aftermath afterwards. If my humidity is not according to the level, what's going to happen? Where are the things that are going? What are the things that I'm going to test if this happens, that scenario? So this sort of specialist knowledge is not existing at the moment, not even in UK. That is very similar, but here it's more, because we are at the moment basing a lot of our agriculture on traditional methods. So people know the well-established procedures. I mean, they don't know much more that, look, technology can be used on this thing, although it needs a lot of training and a lot of effort. For example, a lot of training sessions and a lot of thinking and dissemination of knowledge has to happen before we can go to the next step. The next problem that I see is the customization of the technology. For example, I give you a very simple example about customization. In UK, our problem is that we wanted to heat up things, because the temperature always stays on average 17 degrees. Now we need to heat up things for insect farming, let's say, to produce at 25 degrees something. But here in Oman, we are going to reduce, maybe in summer months, we need cooling. So this customization of heating to cooling and cooling to heating is some sort of thing that has to be either undertaken locally here, or because there are companies over there who are just addressing the UK market or European market, they are more into heating up things. But similar sort of thing has to happen here if we are going to adopt these technologies. Okay, and then the second thing is that there is a limited support to deliver the value. For example, here there are not many bodies which are semi-government and those sort of bodies which can take on a technology from the university and then afterwards commercialize that technology and produce a value out of this. And this is happening. I have seen excellent papers. Even the aquaponics that I talked to you, I have seen papers in 2017 from one of the colleges in Musanna. They have done great job. They have done the the underlying mechanisms and all those things. They have done all those sensors. They have understood all those things. But then there is a huge gap from there on where to go. You have to have a partner who can help you, who would support you to bring up with some sort of product that can be used in the field. Because what they are doing is they are proving that it works. But as all of us know, that when we are going to buy a product, we are not after it works. We are 100% sure it works, and we want very less intervention from the manufacturer of the technology. So this gap is, at the moment, it's there. I mean, it has to be, addressed, and it has to be, some sort of support has to happen between a gap has to be, filled between the academia and between the end users who are going to facilitate all those things. Second thing is about the cost. A lot of things, for example, when you start, there will be a lot of, cost plenties. And who is going to subsidize, for example, all those things? I mean, if there is a plan available that, okay, if someone is bringing new technologies, they are testing new, some sort of incentives has to happen either from the government or from the bodies that, look, if you are using this and we are producing, we are going to use these. And so the circle has to continue. The whole cycle has to continue, basically. Then there is a problem about regulation. A lot of regulations, is not very beneficial, but at the same time, no regulation is also going to spoil the whole discussion. I mean, there should be a regulation body who is going to look into all those things, especially for food, but they look at new technologies and how we can adopt all those things. Commercial partnerships has to happen. Without commercial partnerships, it is impossible to do pure research. I mean, if the universities are doing excellent in producing, in proving that this technology works, but if there is no benefit of this technology for the end user, then sooner or later these technologies will be just mere papers and publications. Really, they are not benefiting anyone. Okay, so we need to really come up with certain sort of mechanism by which the technology tested or produced or brought to Oman is commercialized, basically. So these are the sort of points that I have thought about. I'm sure there are many more, and these are a point of joint discussion between us in Q&A sessions. So are there any suggestions and recommendations? I will just put forward some of them. For example, very first thing, to address specialist knowledge. I think that rather than giving control to the end users for these technologies and these sort of things, we should start thinking at selling systems as a service. Because if we are selling the devices basically to the farmers and to the growers and all those things, they don't have enough knowledge either to calibrate, how to put these devices into their farms, how to use them. So it's better idea that we sell them from the very beginning, managed services. So there should be some sort of control rooms or some sort of bodies which take all those devices and then they afterwards give them as a service to the end users. So this way we can minimize the exposure of the end users to the specialist knowledge. And slowly, as it goes by, you can slowly transfer this knowledge as they are becoming more knowledgeable. You can shift the whole table. But initially, as we start, we should think of selling a managed service. That would be much easier rather than letting farmers know, okay, you have to look into these things and do all those things. All the farmer or the growers have to know is just, okay, they are getting alert that this is happening, and if they're not, if they have to just do only few buttons or few things that are very common, switching on and off and understanding, okay, that is if the end result is not exactly the same, then the managed service will understand and tell them, look, now this is the alteration that has to be done in your farm or in your premises, basically. Then we need to look at electronics distribution store. I'm very surprised that we don't have one yet. I started working here in 2005, and I brought components with me. Mr. Haji is a witness of all those things to build up things. And the situation is still the same. 20 years down the line, we are in the same scenario. I mean, why not there is a distribution like, for example, Farnell, RS, or other sort of electronic shops which you can buy components and you can try it out. The universities are struggling getting the components from abroad, and it takes a long time, and all these things delay and the momentum is lost, and we have limited time. So we must have some sort of facility for having all the components and parts available in Oman, maybe with the help of government and all those things to make it happen. And there must be a PCB making facility here. There should be a body to, for example, to pilot new technologies, as I mentioned in the previous slides. And then there is a commercialization partners that has to be there who are going to commercialize the research. I mean, they are not there to prove or going to take the research part of it, because the research part of it is already very well covered by the universities. They are going to just take the technology and making sure that this technology is usable by a end user in the field. That is their main objective. And in order to do that, if there is something missing, for example, they are going to fill this gap by looking from some help from abroad, basically, and make it happen. Because one of the other thing I need to mention here before I close this talk is that the objectives of research community is very different than the objective of the end user. I mean, the end user, for example, if you are buying a laptop, for example, or I give you a mobile phone, what you expect from a mobile phone is that you take it out from the box, and it should start work, basically. And there should be only 2 or 3 common things that are needed. But if you ask the professor, okay, how we can make a process by which a mobile phone is having this sort of scenario by which only 2 buttons should be there and this should happen and all those. This is no interest to them, because that is not a advancement, or that is not one of their KPIs basically. And this makes sense. But on the other hand, there are other bodies who make sure that how the product development is happening, that should happen, at this level. So with this, I wanted to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk and openly discuss some of the points that I felt are important for the use of new and emerging technologies in Oman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Tariq, for the great lecture. It was really useful. And as you said, technology is always there to optimize production, improve yield, and monitoring. There are many opportunities and challenges, and now the floor is open for discussion from our participants. So let's hear from Dr. Ramin, please. Ramin Muhajir, تفضل.
Ahsant, Doctor, thank you so much for a very comprehensive and eye-opening presentation. A lot of knowledge that was added. I have 2 questions. One is, you referred to it very briefly. What is the return on investment when you come to spend on such technology? What are the financial gains that we're talking about in order for people to invest? And second question, His Excellency Khalil Khonji, he hosted the head of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN in Oman some time ago. And they work a lot with SMEs in the farming industry, and they have very close links, especially with small businesses that are trying to start up in Oman, and they would definitely benefit from this technology. What kind of work or link or partnership have you done with FAO, or is that an area that you would consider?
Thank you very much, Doctor. May I answer? I think who's the host, but I don't know at the moment. Yeah, I just wanted to point out about the return on investment is a very complicated topic. Because for certain technologies, it depends on really how we are implementing all those things. If you are talking about, let's say, take an example of insect farming. If you are talking about a very crude way of doing all those things without involving much of the technologies, only using temperature sensors and humidity sensors, obviously you are not spending much money on it. So all we are doing is giving some training, and we are automating some parts of it, and the rest of the procedure stays manual. Given the conditions here, for example, if the labor cost is cheap in Oman, that will give you quicker return on investment compared to if you are going to implement a full-fledged automation, for example, where all the sieving process, all the molting, the cleaning of the molds, all the other separation of beetles, identifying all those things. If you are automating all those things, then definitely for a small farm or a small setup, that is not very feasible. I mean, I just wanted to point out, for example, the scale of things people are working on. For example, France recently invested in a mealworm farm, which is 375 million, basically. So they are employing all those sort of technologies into their arena. But for Oman, for a farmer to do a simple trial and to work on it, it doesn't need really too much of investment. I mean, I gave a talk to United Nations, I think, Food and Organization, cell in Caribbean islands, and they had a similar sort of thinking. What is the investment needed? And my answer was that it's not much investment. It's about how the policies are in a country and how we let it happen to the next level. So this is sort of answer I have for your question.
Thank you, Doctor. The second part, because organizations such as FAO can sort of bear the cost maybe and help the small and medium-sized businesses emerging in the field of agriculture.
Yeah, that can be, that can be done, but the procedures and engaging with SMEs and all those things, sometimes it's a very long-winded process, and the what sort of help you're getting out is not very desired. I mean, because maybe they will be funding something which is beyond their scope. But there should be, I still feel that there should be some sort of local initiative to adopt these technologies. Obviously, any help from any of these organizations is very desirable, and a link can be built. For example, I'm more than happy to direct or to give the knowledge that we have to any SME or any group of people who wanted to commercialize these technologies. I mean, that is all possible, but then there is some sort of support that is needed from the local bodies, basically.
Thank you, Doctor. Very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Ramin. Thanks, Dr. Muhammad Tariq. Let's also wait for some questions from the colleagues. Actually, I have one question in my mind. It's about the Bioflow fermenters. You mentioned about the vertical farming aeroponics for leafy vegetables, and I think the saffron it's an important vegetable, especially for in terms of cost benefits in regards to Dr. Ramin. But now about the proteins, because now there's a trend in producing proteins from carbohydrates. And Oman is rich in dates, which is a source of carbohydrates of nearly 80 to 75% of carbohydrates. So have you tried any bioflow fermentations in terms of producing proteins from carbohydrates? That's one of my questions.
No, at the moment. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Muhammad.
Just I wanted to answer one by one. So if you have many questions, I forgot. But yeah, the very first thing is that I haven't tried changing the carbohydrates into that, but I know there is a project that is going on that is using algae, I think, and there are some other. I think I read the news somewhere. I think you have a big farm that is being done to convert algae into proteins. That is one of the way forward. I think it's one of the British companies or UK companies who are leading the initiative here. But there are the plants, for example, which can be used. I mean, in certain water, not in the in stagnant water, basically, that can be converted into proteins. I mean, obviously, all those things are important, but they need some sort of guidance from that how a layman can use these technologies and earn a living out of this, or produce proteins out of this. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. That's true. Yes, I mean there are companies who are thinking about the algae and in producing several products, including proteins. My second part, Dr. Muhammad Tariq, it's about the monitoring of carbon dioxide, because you had mentioned about the insects farming, and I think, and also you said that one of the objectives is to protect the environment and also to help in food productions. But especially with the insects, there's always carbon dioxide that needs to be probably replaced by oxygen, or maybe it could be treated with different ways. So I don't know about the scientific flair. I mean, do they think about the carbon dioxide monitorings and improvement of processes of the
Thank you very much. One of the biggest problem is removal of carbon dioxide, because I tell you before removing the problem is about heat conversion or heat exchange. Imagine that you are using a closed environment and you are cooling that environment, or in UK you are heating that environment. Okay. Afterwards, there is a carbon dioxide accumulation within your controlled environment, and you wanted to replace it with fresh air. Now you can use, for example, air handling unit, or you can have a cooling coil in it, and you can have a heating coil in it, and all those things, and you can automate all those things. Okay, but the fact remains that if I'm doing too much of heat exchange, I'm throwing away the heat along with it. So that heat is, basically is needed because I need to maintain my 25 degrees temperature for that, for that thing basically. So how do we, make some sort of mechanisms by which, there are some heat exchangers that are allowing us to replace the air or replace the, bring in more oxygen, but at the same time not throwing away the heat. So this is the same is true for the for both cooling and heating. So this is one of the topics that has to be has to be understood. But coming back to the part of the carbon dioxide that you mentioned, insects are not basically producing that sort of carbon dioxide and that sort of things that are compared to other species that we have. For example, the the cows and all other things. If you look into it, they are much more efficient in terms of the carbon dioxide, expelling carbon dioxide. So this is still manageable. I mean, if that is what you mean by pointing out the carbon dioxide part. Sir, was that your question?
Yeah. I mean, it's as you said, it's right. They produce a very little carbon dioxide.
Yes.
But actually, for the chamber itself, because you'll have the insect inside the chamber, and it's for the insect themselves. It's not for the environment.
Yeah, there is a lot of there is a lot of discussion going on, and you know that insect welfare is one of the main topics of the delay in regulations in UK. Because what's happening is that even the PhD that we have, I am supervising there. There is a long discussion that happened only to understand that the insect welfare. For example, the problem is that how do you kill the insects, or how do you slaughter the insects basically? So the human way of slaughtering the insects is that you use, for example, liquid nitrogen, or you use for example, you put them in a freezer and all those things. Okay, but then the question happens is it really not causing any pain to the insects? And there are people out there who are discussing that we are doing it inhumanly and all those things. And the answer to these questions is that you use a lot of sensors and use to make sure that the welfare of insects are maintained while producing these things. I mean, it's the same. The same is true for any other livestock or any other poultry industry where you don't have to overpopulate all those things.
Thank you, Dr. Now let's hear from Ayman. تفضل أخي Ayman. And then we'll have from Rami Al-Lawati. So please, Ayman, go ahead with your question. تفضل أخي Ayman, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi guys. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak up. I'm just wondering how this does fit into rejuvenating our soil, and how are you familiar with forest type agriculture?
Yeah, people are using earth forms basically at the moment. If you have I came across one experiment in UK that they are trying to produce earth forms basically because the farmer has a very big field, and what they're trying to do is they are trying to produce earth forms to by use of technology to increase the the efficiency of the soil and the fertilization and all those things. Yes, it's possible to do.
How will that fit here? Will that be? I mean, did you guys do any research if that will fit into the Oman soil?
No, that has to be experimented. I mean, we have a full department available in SQU and in other colleges that we can look into the type of soil. What is the sort of nutrients in this soil? Is it a loamy soil, or is it a red soil, or which sort of soil? What sort of moisture is in this soil? And what sort of supplementary things are needed for these sort of worms and other things to be to be existing in these soils. I mean, that is definitely a topic that can be researched now, but I haven't done much into it apart from discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Sorry, Rami, before we take your question, there's one question actually in the chat from Dr. Al-Lawati. If he's here, that'd be great. If not, I can read the question. The question says, from the legal perspectives, are there sufficient regulations and laws for the quality of food that produced here in Oman? So those technologies that are discussed by Dr. Tariq will assist to reach the objectives of food quality that are required here in Oman. Technologies, if not serve quality of food delivered to consumer, then such technologies will not add value to the products or to the producer. Hydroponic was not able to compete traditional food production because the awareness of the consumers and traders were appreciated by them. So this is the question by Dr. Ali Lawati. Dr. Ali Lawati, he's from research side, and he's also a faculty in Nizwa University. So تفضل أخي Dr. Tariq.
I think that is something that is, I am not very well aware of that. I think that is someone else that who is involved here in about the standardization and all those things. But what I can tell you is that the standards for some of these technologies are emerging, and you know, for example, for insect farming and all those things. In Europe, there was this was used, or this was initially allowed for use as in pet food, and you know, recently they are been allowed to use in aquaculture and all those things. Okay, so this is emerging, but I guess that it is something of a local sort of body that is looking into it. But normally these bodies have their own internal meetings, and they decide, okay, maybe United Nations, that Food and Agriculture Organization, is the one which guides people into these sort of things. But the standards are emerging, and this is one of the problems that I mentioned in one of my slides, that unless there are standards, it's very difficult to address these things.
Yeah, I mean, according to my knowledge here, throughout the value chain of food from the farm, as you mentioned, in terms of poultry and agriculture farmings, there are certain sole authorities. And the last one regarding the food, there's a food safety and quality center. They're in charge of the food safety, where the food is fit for consumers. So they do lots of testings to make sure that the food is suitable for consumers and it's a healthy diet for the consumer and for the market. Let's hear now from Akhi Rami. تفضل Akhi Rami Al-Lawati.
Thank you everyone for having me. I have my name is Rami Al-Lawati. I'm representing 360 Green Farm. We are specialized into indoor farming, vertical indoor farming using LED technology, as mentioned by Dr. Now, there are three pillars to any successful enterprise that we all know of, which is, one is the technology providing. So there is always a body who is a technology provider. Second is the operator in some cases, and then there is the investor. And sometimes the investor and operator is one, which I don't see it a very healthy structure unless if you are really into what you are doing right now. But for someone who comes from non-agriculture industry background and stepping in, there is always good to have an operator, as mentioned by Dr. Now, I see there is a lot of potential in Oman. I see there is no worry about, it's not only about competing with the traditional farming, because you have a lot of crops are already getting imported to Oman, and they are also seasonal products, so they cannot be grown in the traditional way in Oman. One point which is very important to be mentioned, that by having all these fruits and vegetables, or whatever human feed crops that they are imported to Oman, they lose their flavor and they lose their nutritional facts while they're during the transportation, because some of them they make almost 10 stops before they reach to Oman, and by the time they reach, like the strawberry looks pink, but never taste the same strawberry that we have in Europe, for example. And the nutrition facts are always, in some cases, they go down by 60%, which is, I think, also a very important point that motivate us to work towards the food and safety and security in Oman. We have created models for the indoor farming. with full business studies. And I think there was an earlier question of the ROI and on, which is really the golden question that any investor or anyone sitting on cash is like, okay, I'll put my money where I'm getting it back, which is it's definitely one of the first questions always gets raised. But as a funding body or as a funding without operating, I think 10 to 15%, up to some cases 20% is very possible on annual basis. And then if you are operator, then it's different, because you're buying the technology, you're operating, you're funding it, and you're doing the whole circle. So definitely the margins will be higher, but they come also with a cost of knowledge first of all. And as doctor mentioned, that these products are very sensitive, and one small mistake or lack of awareness in any how to react to anything, because you're dealing with nature, and nature, you have to know how to deal with nature for as simple as change of temperature by certain degrees and how to act upon it. So yeah, I think there is a lot of potential in Oman. In the last period of time, I've done so much research in so many areas and so many industries, and there is a lot going on and a lot of potential. I would like to we have also a lot of potential investors from different countries, but for some reason not from Oman. So if anyone in the circle who is looking into investing in the agriculture industry, there are definitely good opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rami. I agree with what you said. I was going to tell you about the same story about strawberries. I think they are sold in supermarkets at about 4 riyals a kilo. And one of the issues, or one of the advantage, or you can say disadvantage, of using mobile phones and the latest technologies and gadgets is that I am finding ingredients and fruit that my ancestors and my forefathers never have eaten, were never aware of all those things, okay, which are now demanded by people. I mean, if you go and look into households, they ask for ingredients that I myself find it difficult to know what are these basically. So that's very true. I mean, the traditional staple food is produced in certain region, is not in competition, but the exotic food that you're mentioning is definitely one you're importing it from outside, and they can be produced at a scale in-house is much more profitable and desirable, especially in terms of flavor and in terms of reducing their cost.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Thank you, Akhi Rami. I think I see Dr. Bashir Al-Riyami from the Investment Authority. So, Dr. Bashir, if you want to ask a question or add something, please.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed and Dr. Mohammed, for the informative meeting today, informative talk you have delivered, highlighting the new technologies that we all wish to speed it up in the Sultanate so far. One of the issues, I will compliment Dr. Ali as well, comments on maybe the feasibility of applying such technologies is all will be depending on the market demand as well. But I have seen a very successful models abroad, even close by region and other countries, when they created the demand for the market, all those technology were implemented, the smart farming, the IoT, LoRa technology, because people would like to go for such technologies. It will save water, improving the yields, having more products to be sold as well. But without a market demand, I think we have some issues as well. This is one of the things, but I would like to focus on the R&D part of all those technologies. We can't continue any business in that field if we don't really have an R&D, continuous R&D coming from the universities and institutes. They are the supplier also for the capabilities that will let those businesses continue and grow as well. So I think we need that part to be improved by funding, more funding, and the challenges to be closed to the institutes and the universities. So this is one of the recommendations you had, or one of the comments you had at the end, that I also see it very obvious that we can't implement any of those high-tech projects or even the biotechnology type of projects, algae, insects, towards protein production, even the smart farming. We can bring the technology, implement it, but it will not grow. With the smallest challenges, the whole thing will start. We can shut down a business once we don't have such support. So yeah, Dr. Mohammed, you have mentioned that, and I would like to highlight it as well. Maybe this is close as well to what we are doing recently. So a collaboration is a must at this stage.
Thank you very much, Bashar, and I thank you very much for pointing out. That is actually there is a great need for doing pilot projects. So we are always talking about that. I hear that a lot of youngsters who are graduating from universities are looking for ideas. We have hundreds of ideas basically. The trouble is that there must be some sort of seed funding that is available to these young brains and be directed that, look, you are going to prove this part. For example, in agritech, we have tens of ideas that has to be done, but there should be, first of all, demand should be there in the market, and at the second time there should be direction to gather these individuals and tell them that you are going to do this, and there is so all this thing has to happen in two ways. There should be some pilot testing of these technologies and different things, and at the same time the gauging of all those things should happen at a local level. The other thing is that Oman, if you look at it, is a small country compared to many other countries around. But one very important thing is that it's a very stable country. The environment, the area, the geography, and all those things are very important. So it can be used as a hub to pilot a lot of projects, and then these projects can be exported to outside world. For example, if you look around in Africa and many other neighboring countries, they are desperate to get very simple technologies which can make a difference. But there must be pilot projects here which can answer the basic questions: return on investment, for example. Is it feasible? It's not feasible. If it's not feasible, why it's not feasible? So all these things should happen between a commercial partner and academic partner, basically.
I have a small story to tell as well regarding the importance of science and R&D as well. So we know, like, the Netherlands was so advanced, and you mentioned that in smart farming, and I think they supplied the European country with 60% of the fruits and other crops. But with the latest crisis with the energy, I have seen a shift for their business model. They started to sell their technologies worldwide now, because they knew they might have a risk on, they won't be able to produce more because of the profit margin of such production is always very low. So if you can't compete, then they started now to have an approach everywhere, almost worldwide, to deliver their technologies. And this is a very high advantage for them, for the companies who are selling the technology. So we can learn from those. Ukrainian as well had an issue now, but then they moved recently. I was reading an article that an innovation, they stated it as an innovation, that the model of marketing going back to the small farms, fragmented, and then they have this application to sell everything. Actually, it's the old way of having a small farms collected, where you direct your production towards the market, outside market, and this is a saving for almost most of the fragmented type of farms and farmers to survive, which is very similar to us here in Oman. So yeah, maybe those will highlight the importance of technologies, and the importance of R&D to continue here in Oman, especially we're heading towards an agriculture revolution in the Sultanate because of the challenges, and we are still stated as the basket of the Gulf region. So I hope we maintain that statement and we speed up the movement in the technology to be adapted as soon as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Bashar, for your information. I see no one is raising his hand, so I have only one point to ask you, Dr. Mohammed Tariq. Now, if you can see Europe, they have this Europe gap, and there's also a global gap for agricultural practices. And this starts from the farm all the way down, to warehouses and the supply chain. And here in Oman, we have the majority of the loss is mainly in the post-harvest and the post-mortem. So it's the other side of the value chain, from the supply, which is agriculture, now to the demand side. And most of the food is imported, as you know. It's nearly 70 to 80% of the food is imported. So my question, to avoid the losses, especially with the fruits, vegetables, in terms of post-harvest losses, is the IoT, ICT through the scientific flair, are there such technologies that could also optimize the loss in terms of post-harvest and the post-mortem? And that's my question. Then I'll leave the floor also to Dr. Fadi Al-Saad from the Far Cattle Company. تفضل أخي دكتور طارق.
Yeah, thank you very much. I forgot to mention that, I was only more talking about the upstream and midstream technologies. I did work on the downstream technology, which is grain storage. So what's happening is that, in the silos, I have experience. I designed a system that silos can be used to store grains. Because what happens is that, after some time, the inside of those silos, there is a sogginess and humidity rise. And because of this humidity rise, what happens is that they try to decay from inside. And the technologies that are used inside are monitoring the CO2 levels. Even some Japanese companies and others, they are trying to monitor the sound, because you can detect the sound of those insects and many things much earlier than the visual signs. So definitely, yeah, there is a great scope, or there is a whole area of post-harvest sort of technologies that can be used based on the same principles that we have. For example, the IoT and robotics and the AI and all those things. For example, one of the things that can be used is to understand how's the quality of the produce. I mean, you can very easily count, for example, the quantify or qualify the produce, and then sell it according to all those things. And this is definitely an area that can be investigated and understood much further. And you're right about it.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Now I'll leave the floor to Dr. Fadi Al-Saad.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for allowing me to speak a little bit here. I want to also thank you for inviting me for this great panel to discuss different technologies and potential to be able to support Omani food security, and also for new projects and all this. Just to have a couple of points. Number one is that since Dhofar cattle feed, it's in Salalah, it has a great place for agriculture. I think this is the most place that it has the biggest success criteria to be able to develop those type of technologies. I would like to say that the company is willing to cooperate with any ideas that make sense and provide the support. Support meaning a place, a land and water, electricity, some support basically to do the trial, because I think the most important thing is to validate the idea, the technology. It is workable in Oman. And again, the second point will be financially or economically or viable. So this is what I believe the bottleneck, along with the funding. So from us, we will be willing to look at any ideas that it will be any company was interested to develop the ideas. We're willing to support. It's number one. The second point, I think also Mr. Rami is here, and I think I met him. We met his also a company. For example, hydroponic. We are very interested in hydroponic, and it's a lot of discussions, a lot of data, a lot of media, a lot of references. Everybody's talking about it, and we want to, I'm open-minded. I want to see how, but they couldn't sell the idea for my team, for my technical team. I mean, if my technical team, it cannot be sold, this is an issue. So any ideas has to have a technical verification to sell to the technical team, and economical. Commercial idea is how much it's going to save money, how much it's going to add value, how it's going to help me, not only in talks, in actual example. Because a lot of talks, people are excellent in giving you, selling ideas. So this is what I believe is the most important second point, is that any new ideas has to be studied very well and give us an example of where it has been used and how it's commercially benefited the company. Because if we cannot convince my technical team, I cannot force them on this. Yeah, this is really, there's a lot of discussions I can have. I can have an hour discussion on this because this is my background about technologies and how we can use technologies into commercial, convert these ideas into commercial part. But this is 2 points I just want to raise to everyone. We are here to support if it may, whenever it's needed, if it makes sense. And also any commercial idea or any idea, it has to be ready to convince the businessmen and also the technical people like us, because we are the end users that we want to use these technologies. And thank you very much.
Mr. Fadi, that I just wanted to point out to you is that we are the original technology manufacturers. We are producing everything from scratch. We have done all those platforms and all those things that I showed you. And this is in my pipeline at the moment, that we wanted to install at least 100 different sensors in Oman and try to understand really what is the outcome. So, for example, through this thing, if this is an opportunity and we can, or any other member who is willing to test out these technologies that I mentioned is interested, we can very easily run some sort of pilot that gives you all this sort of verification and validation of what you're saying. But this is all, that's why I mentioned that there is not a central body which can address all those efforts that we are doing. And it's through this sort of forum that we are just saying, okay, that is possible. So we are more than willing to talk about these things and maybe involve multiple partners in the same thing. So we have different verifications, not only from one partner, from different partners. Okay, the same sort of thing is verified.
Well, very good. If you're talking about hydroponics, my team and all the 3 doctors, I'm talking not about junior guys. People are in economics, people are in animal feed, people in also, veterinarian. They all didn't feel good about the technology. They believe it's just, it may be good for in Ireland, for example, or good in Canada, or good whatever. But for Oman, they just don't feel, because all the simple questions, technical questions, have not been answered. And your company or whoever, they believe they answered it, but it's not been answered to the satisfaction of my technical team. We can discuss this offhand, but these are critical. You need to convince any company that this is really a good technology, and you have the data, solid data, not just a nice brochure. And people are now very technically oriented and expert, so they need to give a good answers from them, or even call for a meeting and show them, give examples of exactly how it's worked, where it worked, because in Oman, if you want to start from scratch, I don't think it's the best idea. You need to really develop the idea somewhere, okay, and then coming back here and show it, because you have a reference. If you do not have a reference, it's very difficult. To convince people to put their time and effort and energy. So, but anyway, I'm willing to, Dr. Muhammad, he has my contact, and many people has my contact. So I'm willing to open the discussion for, even on the protein and any other projects that it will help Oman and help the economy in Oman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. And as Dr. Tariq also mentioned about the precision in agriculture, then you also mentioned about the IoT analysis. So the degree of precision, probably in a pilot study, not only in Oman, in anywhere else, it might also be useful. What precision could the IoT and the ICT satellite imaging could give for optimizing production? I see Akhi Rami Al-Lawati, he's also raising his hand. Could you please unmute yourself, please?
I would like to add on Dr. Fadi's comment about the Oman and non-Oman. I totally believe that is correct. We have to have always something to compare with, and we have a proper study done anywhere else and then implemented in Oman's environment. And there's so many studies available all around the world, especially when it is a controlled environment. It is the same thing wherever you put the system, as long as you're providing the feed and you're providing the right temperature for it. I think like any other business, there is always risk in any business. There is always challenges in any business. And this is a challenge that can be, it's not a problem, it's a challenge that can be faced and can be overtaken. And one of the best ways, in my opinion, is you see, even if he's a technology provider, he's one of the best and he's proven all over the world that he is the best. And then he comes to Oman and then there is no operational, and it's not operated right, then again, the model will not create the crops that you're looking for. So yes, having the technology providing, checking on the providing, and having the right team or outsourcing the operation, that's also a second thing that can reduce the risk. And then also having a controlled, what is the controlled environment? Where is it located? We have in Oman, we have a lot of variety of different temperatures and weathers all across from north to south. So there is always land that can accept you and allow you to get wherever you want. And this is what I wanted to add to Dr. Fadi's
Okay.
point.
Thank you very much, Akhi Rami. If no more questions, I'll give the last word before I summarize the session to Saad Sheikh Khalil. Tafadhal. A last word of the session, or anyone has any questions he wants to highlight or you want to bring it.
Engineer Saleh or His Excellency Khamis Al-Kyoumi, Engineer Saleh Al-Shamsari, if you have any points to be added, please. Mr. Haji Adam.
Mr. Haji Adam.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tariq, for a very informative presentation. Of course, and I have heard some of it before from you. And from what I hear from my friends here in this group, you know, it's always difficult to start in Oman. Anything is difficult. I was surprised, a few days ago when I was surfing in the internet, I came across some Indians. There were two brothers with IT backgrounds, and they decided to learn about saffron, growing saffrons in a controlled environment. And it took them 3 months to start and learn and start their project. And they are not that highly sophisticated or whatever the way we are talking it about here. But now they have taken the initiatives of going around and training the farmers. They've become consultants. Okay, they didn't wait for the government or didn't wait for any big investments. They just learned the technology and the method of producing this sort of things, and they started it in a 3 by 3 square meter room. Okay, and now they are going around and teaching their fellow farmers, how to start. And people are talking about like maybe $10,000 to $15,000 to start something commercial. And their eyes are all on exporting saffron outside India, not for biryani. It's all to outside India. Also, I came across once some time ago in Dubai. A couple of warehouses were abandoned, big warehouses, and these warehouses by some Indian businessmen in Dubai, they converted the warehouses to growing controlled environment plants, and I don't know what else they were doing. They were also doing some flowers, and not for the Dubai market. They were exporting it overseas. And like Rami said, it doesn't matter where you are. And maybe it helps with the energy. For example, maybe if you are doing it in Jabal Akhdar, it's a bit cooler, and then you don't need to use too much air conditioning. And if you are in the desert, maybe you need more energy to use. But it is possible. Dr. Tariq maybe forgot to mention that we are starting also a 3 square meter pilot project for saffron in Oman here in Sur. And we have a colleague who's retired, and he's a good farmer, and he agreed to set it up. So if everything goes according to the plan, that very soon we'll be having a 3 by 3 square meter lab for studying the possibility of growing saffron in controlled environment. So it's possible, I think. Anything is possible. And going back to Asad not saying that his technical people were not in agreement, I think fire them. Maybe they're not good enough to to understand this technology. You have to change them, or maybe educate them, or bring their standard up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akhi Haji Adam, for your talk and the information. Are there any other questions from our participants? If not, I would like to thank you, Dr. Tariq, for your wonderful and great presentations and all the useful knowledge provided in your speech. To sum up, as you said, there are 70% demand for food by 2050. And this could be, of course, cause like a shortage in food supply, whereby the yield optimizations through IoT, ICT, and satellite imagings and technologies could also help in food productions. Then you highlighted some of the new and emerging technologies for precision of agricultures in terms of acidities and flow, and also in terms of productions. And you give us an example of Wakan Tech Oman that used drones in controlling and monitoring date palm trees in the Sultanate. Then you mentioned about the robotics, sensors, and the use of robotics in agriculture productions. Some of the useful technologies that you mentioned here is the livestock monitorings in the case of electronic collars, and also in the case of monitoring feeding time, selective breeding, and disease detections using high resolution images by IoT and technologies. You also talked about the poultry monitoring. This includes environmental monitoring of quality cultivars and also quality productions. You mentioned aquacultures and the toxicity monitoring with the use of high technologies. And also you highlighted the ammonia toxicities in terms of aquacultures. Vertical farming and hydroponics was also there in terms of production of leafy vegetables, including saffron, as Akhi Haj Adam also mentioned, that there's a project here in the Sultanate for using a controlled environment in the production of saffron in Oman. And also the use of LED lights for lights. Insects farming was also explained, and the use of special technology where you call them real-time scientific flare insecto units. And that's usually for monitoring the farming of insects for protein production, as well as for oil and lipids productions. And where the production rate was high, and you just give it by 80 days, starting from the eggs all the way up to the adults of insects. Then you mentioned about the data and the AI analysis of historic data, where the quality control departments could also follow up with the production of all these agriculture units. You highlighted some of the challenges, and you put them into 6 categories. The first one was specialist knowledge, where you need a specialist who are aware and knowledgeable about the use, beside, of course, their backgrounds. They also highlighted the customization challenges, the cost, the commercialization partners within chains of academia and commercial partners, and the funding as some of the challenges. And then you highlight that opportunities are there for Oman to utilize the resources and of course to improve the return on investment as highlighted by some of my colleagues. There is a need for cost-benefit analysis, has been highlighted by some of the participants in the meetings, and the test of the technology in a real environment. That's all from the summary side, and I would like to express my sincere thanks to you, Dr. Tariq, for your wonderful presentations, all the useful knowledge, and looking forward to see these technologies implemented in place, and of course improving the agricultural output from the Omani lands. I don't know if anyone else would like to say anything. So we have also a message from Saad Sheikh Khalil to thank you, Dr. Tariq, for this important lectures, and of course to thank me. And also we have some comments from other colleagues about the importance of your lecture. So wishing you all the best here in Oman, and we're looking forward to see you inshallah in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both. Thank you, Dr. Tariq, and thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed, for moderating this session. We see you, inshallah, next Saturday in a new topic and talk. Until we see you, keep safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.